Hello, welcome to another episode of Data in the Hallway. My name is Ray Pei, Community Manager at PingCAP, and here with my colleague Daniel Van Eden, joining us from Netherlands. Hi, Daniel, how are you?
Hello, I'm well. You?
Good, good. So cool. And we're joined by our colleague, Sean Bogaard, who's training program manager. I mean, Sean and you and I have been working for, as soon as you joined, and it's been a pleasure collaborating with you on a lot of different initiatives, and we've been looking for ways to have you come on. And there's been a lot of innovation lately in PingCAP trading, so I thought this would be a good time to have you on and talk to you about various initiatives that you've been working on and what people can expect to see. I mean, they're probably already seeing it today, but more to come. So, Sean, welcome. Great to have you on. So I mean, obviously you are responsible for our training programs, especially for North American and European audience. But you know what you do touches our global audience as well. Let's talk about like education and training in general. Like if you look back like 10, 15 years, like let's talk about how education and training used to be. And in this context, we'll talk about both not just corporate training, but even in like educational, like university type of settings. So,
Yeah, sounds good. First of all, thank you for having me. And for the people in the Netherlands, goedemorgen, goedemiddag, of goedenavond, welcome. Good to see you all. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the corporate education versus academic education, this part will give you a little bit of clarity, right? There are two different goals and there are two different methodologies and approaches to make it more efficient. Where the academia, which is where we all come from, right? We all go to school at some point. So the academia, the goal there is to provide you with a very broad theoretical foundation and then offer you critical thinking skills to be able to enhance that knowledge to a point where you can become an expert in said topic. Corporate training, it's not meant to teach you the broad theoretical knowledge of a specific topic. It's more focused against having job specific skills, job specific knowledge, and to enhance your ability to effectively do your job, basically. So there are two different approaches in how you want to achieve that. And whereas the traditional academia style went through the history of everything, bringing you all the way to modern day, we don't do that in corporate education anymore because we've learned over time that's no longer efficient. That's one of those evolutions that when it comes to knowledge retention, which is the crucial element here, knowledge retention in an academic format, right? In a lecture format, you retain about 5 to 10% of whatever has been shared with you within a 24-hour period. Now, if you show up to a corporate setting and tell people you're going to pay us a lot of money to train your group and your group is going to retain about 5% of what we tell them, they're never going to pay you any money for anything. They're going to be like, well, that's not going to be worth it. So that's why you have to look at things from a different perspective and take a different approach, right? And as the evolution for corporate training happened, you started to see things like blended learning approaches and having more hands-on labs and being more ingrained in the day-to-day work of the target audience. It allowed for that knowledge retention to shoot up to like 60% all of a sudden. And now you're starting to be like, okay, this is going to become more efficient for my team and more efficient for what I need my team to learn to be able to continue to grow as a company. So that's kind of the short changes that kind of forked academia away from corporate training and especially the why, right? It's about that knowledge retention and the ability to translate that to direct results in your day-to-day job. So that's where the initial changes came from. But as you indicated, technology never stops evolving, right? It's a continuous cycle. And as that goes on, there's also a lot of new things that come into play, things like AR, VR, AI. So there's so much that we can talk about in terms of evolution. And as we go through this conversation, you'll probably hear some of the things that we're focusing on in the short term for PingCAP, and then also some of the things that we're going to be looking at in the long term. So I hope to be able to give people some understanding of what we're doing, the evolution and why we're doing it, and also to make sure that everybody understands our information is free. Okay, we want you to play with our stuff. We want you to use our stuff. We want you to learn our stuff. We have a lot of stuff that's free, and we'll talk more about that later. But we also have the curated opportunity to have somebody come on site or deliver virtually that is specifically catered to your group that is a more advanced level of education. Because some of the topics, when it comes to our product, right, distributed SQL, it becomes inherently harder to do by yourself without being able to ask somebody direct questions or have somebody be able to guide you on the process of why, right? That's the crucial element, the why aspect. So hopefully that gives you a long answer to a short
Yeah.
question.
No. I mean that's a really good background because it makes me think about like my very first corporate training. And this, I'm obviously dating myself. I started my career as a sysadmin, and they had to send me to a class for a full week. Like
Yes.
I had to travel. I'm away from work. I'm off the clock for, quote unquote, off the clock for 5 days, Monday through Friday. And like you said, like there's no way I'm going to retain after 5 days of training what I learned Monday morning, like, whatever the figure is. So no wonder the bosses are concerned about sending somebody to training. Like, I mean, you want people to be trained, but there's like a really tremendous amount of cost, right? But that's how uh, even corporate training used to be. Like, if you wanted to be an Oracle administrator, they would send you to Redwood City, or if you happen to live near one of their training facilities. But it's there's a tremendous amount of cost, and in this day and age where a lot of companies are looking at expenses, that becomes really difficult to justify. And then you mentioned like the purpose of the academic training. I mean, even on the academic side, if you talk to university students nowadays, the way they learn things, like like a programming or about compilers or whatever they're learning, the way they're approaching classes and learning is very different from like us older folks are going through, right? So yeah, and then you need to change with the times, and I think Sean, that's what you're alluding to. If you offer training, like I mean, some customers may want that. I mean, I think we know some customers that have made a request. Can you come here for 5 days and offer this kind of training? We're obviously happy to do that, but that's not for everybody. I think that's one of your key points, Sean.
Agreed.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
one of the main things is, as you alluded to, we kind of have evolved as humanity, right? We're in a new phase of humanity where waiting, downtime, unavailable, those are things that are no longer acceptable in today's day and age because we have the technology to be able to avoid that. One of our key points that we always put forward when it comes to TiDB that you can operate with 0% downtime. Right. So if you're promoting a product that says, oh, you don't have to be down, how can you promote education that takes your team down for an X amount of time? So that's where the modern day age that we're living in society, it's all about instant, right? Everything has to be immediate. It has to be always available. These are all the things that we talk about our product, TiDB. So what we've done in the education department is we've adapted that in our approach as well, where you no longer have these giant massive courses to consume. We've brought it way down so that even in traditional sense, we no longer do the 5 days. Our longest training is 2 days, and that's it. And that's 2 times 6 hours is not even a full day. And the reason why we've made it that way is because, as you said, you can't be offline for a whole week, right? Whatever training you're going to do is considered your own personal growth path, but you're still required to do your day to day, and your boss is still going to require you to clock in for 40 hours and still resolve problems and still do what you're supposed to do. So that's why the traditional method of traditional instructor-led training has been phased out over time, and it's now become way more digestible. And I actually I call it blended learning plus, right? And the reason, well, everything is plus now, right? HBO plus, Max plus, whatever they're called. So the reason I call this plus is you have the same amount of content, but you now offer that content in smaller digestible chunks in modules, right? Because you take a modular approach and you allow people to do it on their own time. You make an agreement like, okay, we're going to do 1 week or 2 weeks, and you can do this whenever you want, whenever it works for your schedule, and you get our support 24/7 by mail, by chat, by video call, whatever is needed to support those students. And now all of a sudden you see that not only is the completion rate going up, the engagement is way more intimate, and questions are being asked in a manner that are way more efficient for the people that you're trying to educate, right? So instead of them asking like, oh, what does ABC mean? Now they're saying like, all right, so ABC means this. How does that apply to my use case? How can I turn this specific piece of technology into something efficient for me, what I need to solve my pain points? And by meeting people where they are, rather than having them come to us, right? It changes the whole dynamic. And now all of a sudden people are motivated to do the work because they're like, oh, I can do whenever I want. But I have people ready to help me when I need. And that changes the whole dynamic. And we've actually seen knowledge retention rates go up even higher because our certification exams, the pass rate has shot up tremendously since we've made these changes, right? Before it was like 30-40% people would hit on the first time. We're now looking at 80 to 90% of the people hitting on the first time. So they are immediately more knowledgeable and able to obtain those certifications for their own personal growth as well as their company's growth without losing that efficiency for the day-to-day job. So it's just become part of the foundational pieces that you need to have successful education, because in a corporate setting, we can't take a week off anymore. That's just no longer possible.
Yeah.
You just came back from FOSDEM, for example. I've seen people at FOSDEM try to listen to what's being said while working so that they don't get fired, So that's a situation that's just no longer acceptable in today's day and age.
Right, right. And then as people know, FOSM's over the weekend. So even over the weekend, you're not necessarily off the clock.
No.
I mean, you touched on a lot of like a new, I mean, what I call trends and new developments in education, like blended learning, providing flexibility, smaller chunks. And important thing that you pointed out like earlier is you have a lot of good information available for free on whether it's videos or text or blogs. And this is something that I think Daniel and I both heard because we had three of the hackathon winners from last year from Indonesia. And one of the questions we asked was, how did you get started? When did you get started? And they mostly got started in their early teens, and they didn't go to school. They didn't sign up for like expensive like a program or anything. A lot of the stuff they got online, and they downloaded open source software like TiDB, right? And then they were able to get experience like hands on, and that's how people like approach things, even young people. So
Yeah,
good.
I think that's also a very important thing to touch on, that it's like very easy to actually get practice with some of this software. Because like back in the day, if you had an Oracle database, you might need a license, you need like a beefy machine and a lot of time. So you're not going to practice it. But nowadays with all the tools, you just spin up a database, you practice the things you've learned directly.
Right,
Exactly.
right. Yeah. And you can spin up an environment, like you can do it on your laptop in a lot of cases, or just spin up a virtual machine or something on, in a lot of cases for pretty affordable costs, right? So I think like you're alluding to, Daniel, like that getting that hands-on experience used to be for very limited number of people in the early days when we're getting started, but that's not the case anymore. So it's easy to experiment and break things, right? So
Exactly.
yeah,
So first, before we move on, apa
yeah,
kabar? Good to see
yeah,
you. Welcome. Glad to see you all being part of our
yeah,
group. I love it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
what both of you gentlemen are alerting to, we're actually
yeah.
in the process of releasing the ability to have a real live environment playground to do whatever free courses that we have. And the great part that we're doing here with this evolution in what we're offering is we're taking the open source approach to our education. We want to share all the information that we have freely. We want to give people a real environment, right? It's not a sandbox, it's not a virtual machine. We actually spin up your environment on AWS for you, provide you with the details. And people have always asked me, like, Is that really an AWS environment? Can I get to it from my laptop? Absolutely. Can I connect things like MySQL Workbench to it? Absolutely. It's a real environment. The only limitation is there's a timer, right? You have 2 hours from the moment that you start before it kills itself, and that has to do with cost on our end. It's one of those things. But you can start as many times as you want, and you can do whatever you need. So we're leaning into that process where we want people like the examples that you gave from our winners in Indonesia, to actually get on the platform, see what it looks like in real life, not a closed off environment, but real life, so that they can get applicable skills that they can now use to win things like our hackathons, and build amazing applications and further their knowledge and value as an individual. I love that approach, right? The open source community is open source for a reason, right? And people who are all in on open source, they will applaud this kind of thinking, because knowledge and information should be shared freely, right? It's not going to affect our bottom line to have you be more educated about our product. That actually might work in our benefit as a company, because once you have more knowledge, you'd be like, this could actually work for what I need, and you'll circle back. So I'm a big proponent of open source, sharing freely, teaching freely, and helping people skill up, and setting them up for success, which is something that we're going to talk about hopefully in a minute, because you and I are teaming up to do something specifically to engage with the community in that manner. So maybe you want to tee that up for our audience?
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned like we don't want to sort of hoard like information, which is sort of the traditional way of a lot of companies used to operate. Because here's another way that it helps us as a community and a company. We have like presence on both Discord and Slack. If people post a question, people like Daniel and others at PingCAP are very good about jumping on and helping answer their questions and solve their problems. It's going to be much better if community members can help each other, right? That just makes us more efficient as a community, and it helps build relationship amongst different community members. So there's a lot of benefit, and it's not just about cost. It's not about how much value we have on information. It's all part of building a community and making this a good place for where people feel welcome and feel safe about asking questions, right? So and then the other thing I want to point out, Sean, you touched on a lot of different ways we're going to be offering training. In our episode description, we'll provide links so people can go check that out and have direct experience into how our education is evolving. And, I've been, obviously I'm very biased. I've been very impressed with the way we've been approaching things, and not necessarily just abandoning the old way of doing things, but
you just froze for about a minute and a half.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think my internet was a little unstable, but yeah, what I was just to sort of recap what I was saying in case people didn't hear was a lot of the good like educational developments that you've been working on with your colleague Sean. Like I'll put those information with links on the episode description so people can check that out and experience those firsthand. And as we get more content and new programs go live, it'll be available from those websites. So so speaking of like teeing up, so like Sean, you were alluding to, you and I have been working together for a while. But one of the things that both of us heard from the education side and community side is people wanting to know more about our TiDB tools or toolkit elements. So when you use TiDB, not only do you get a database, but we have like a lot of these toolkits for deploying TiDB to help you with migration, data export and import. So we want to create a fun challenge for people to be introduced to 6 of our tools. And that's why we're calling the challenge 6 Peaks Challenge. And we'll release a training video, like a 5-10 minute video on each of these tools, and then you'll be given a challenge. The challenge isn't going to be too strenuous. It should be something that you'll be able to do in less than an hour for most people. It'll be like doing a simple write-up or sending us a screenshot of you using our tool. So yeah, Sean, let's talk about that. I think this is like, came up during one of our one-on-ones, and then we both of us had like a light bulbs going on as we're having the discussion. But yeah, Sean, I'll leave the floor to you. So.
Of course. So, as you indicated, you and I have been going through teamwork on different projects and different approaches, how we can help our community, how we can help our people, right? And we both kind of came up with the with the situation that we're getting asked similar questions, right? Similar questions are coming up in a recurring manner. So that looked like the perfect opportunity for us to jump on that and not just provide people with a video or a little bit of like, all right, here's a course, go do that and you'll know what to do, because that is the easy and cheap way out. We thought together that it would be a great way to engage with the community where we do something fun, but at the same time challenging to give them the opportunity to get those skills, right? So I would kind of label this as a kind of like a micro learning, right? A micro certification, micro learning based opportunity where we're going to look at our toolkit and when to use specific tools, how they can benefit you, and how they can make your life easier. Because that's the ultimate goal here. We're not trying to sell you on our toolkit. Our toolkit is downloadable for free, right? So we don't get paid if you download it, if you do use it, if you don't, it makes no difference. What we're trying to do for our community and for the people that we engage with is what can we do to make your life easier, to make you more successful, and to give you some fun, right? That's the main goal here about the 6-piece challenge. We want something fun. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be approaching the toolkit from a logical perspective, right? We're going to go through the first step, the first tool, and this is not a spoiler. This is just fact. The first tool that we will always start with is our tool called TiDB. Now, TiDB is our management tool, which will allow you to install and run the other tools and other commands within your TiDB deployment. And the reason why we bring that up is because we're a distributed SQL database, many people feel that as they start to grow, right, their clusters start to grow, they have many more servers added, it becomes increasingly hard to manage things in an efficient manner. And that's where we start talking about, well, what about TiDB? You can literally use TiDB from the control machine to manage your entire cluster. And now all of a sudden, you no longer have to look at all these different servers as individual pieces. They're all just a part of the bigger machine. And TiDB allows you to run that machine in an efficient manner. So what we're going to be doing here is starting with that foundational piece and then building up further along until we get to the point where we're like, okay, we've now achieved the 6 peaks. We've summited 6 different peaks, 6 different tools. Combine all these tools and you will be able to run any TiDB deployment anywhere in the world from an efficient standpoint. And it will also give you the skills to not just run everything, but be able to expand on your current use case, add new use cases, adjust your use case to be more efficient. It just sets you up for so much success. Now, the fun part here is we're going to engage with the community in a manner that, as you said, we're not just going to give them videos to watch. We're actually going to challenge them like, all right, if you want to participate, here's how you do it. We want you to do a screenshot. We want you to show us the workflow. We want you to show us that you're importing massive amounts of data or exporting massive amounts of data. And we're going to give you some fun ways to do that. We're also going to set you up with the ability to do that for free, right? Because we're going to have those environments that we touched on earlier for anybody to just log in, start up, and do what you need to do and shut it off when you're done so that you don't need to use your own resources. So we're really going to set you up for a fun journey. Ultimately, in the end, we haven't settled on what we're going to reward people who are participating with, but we want to make it so that we celebrate all of you, right? Because it's not about us. We work for PingCAP, we work with TiDB, so it's not about us. It's about all of you in the community and all of you that want to participate and learn some new skills. We want to engage with you, answer your questions, show you some fun stuff, and just have a journey that by the end of it, that we all feel like, you know what? This was an added value to my career. This was an added value to my time, because we want you to feel that your efforts and your committed time gets rewarded, gets acknowledged, and is worth it in the end. So that's what these 6-peak challenge is to me, from an educational perspective, as well as from a community perspective, where I'm not looking to achieve a certain number, if we just get one person to participate, I will consider this to be a success. But if we can motivate more people by showing them like, hey, look at what our community is doing. If you want to join in, please come on ahead. It's going to be a multi-week journey. So there's no time limit like, oh, if you missed the first week, you can't catch up. There's none of that. So from my perspective, the Six Peaks Challenge is our way of giving back to the community while simultaneously elevating the community to a new level of knowledge and understanding. Hopefully that makes sense and wasn't too much of a ramble, but I get kind of
Uh,
excited to engage with people, right? So that's
yeah,
why I'm
no,
a trainer.
yeah, I think, like I said, I think we're both excited after that one-on-one conversation. I still remember that, and yeah, I mean, like we said, we're going to be very generous with the time. It's not like you have a week to do this. Like, well, people will be given opportunity towards the end of the year of 2025 to complete the challenges, and we'll have some fun swags. Like if you complete all six, like you'll be a summit climber. If you complete five, I think we're calling it the high camp. So, yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's not just to force people to use our tools, but it's sort of a fun way to sort of engage with our community members and also get feedback. I mean,
Yes.
another interesting thing that I'm looking forward to is maybe they'll have feedback about the documentation about specific tools or use cases, and we're definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, we'll have a web page up and running on the program, and we'll probably links in the episode description as well. So cool. Well, thank you, Sean, for your enthusiasm and giving us a background on the evolution of training, and how training will continue to evolve at PingCAP for our users and community members. So I think we come to our last question, and this is the tradition we have for all of our podcast guests. And Sean, you're a world traveler. You lived in many different parts of the world, but now you live in the U.S. in the state of New Hampshire. So for people that are not familiar with northeastern part of the U.S., it's a pretty small state in New England. But tell people about something about New Hampshire that people may not be familiar with.
Sure. So when I moved to the States 10 years ago now, I've been living in this Northeast area because it reminds me of back home, right? I'm originally Irish and I'm part Dutch as well, which is why I was able to speak Dutch to Daniel to greet him. And I've lived in both countries as well. So this place, nature-wise reminds me of Ireland, right? Not of Holland because my house literally is 10 times higher than the highest peak in the Netherlands right now. So that doesn't really count. But the attitude of the state, it's called live free or die, and it kind of matches what I am used to back in the Netherlands, right? People are honest, they're straightforward, they'll tell you straight to your face whether they like you or not, and there's no malice. It's just honesty, right? And for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. For me it works very well because I lived for 22 years in the Netherlands, and I've come to appreciate that kind of approach. But in terms of a fun fact about the state, this was something that blew my mind when I first learned about it. Because when I first moved to New Hampshire, I went to a place called Mount Washington, and Mount Washington is super fun. You can drive up it all the way up to the summit. It's great. Here's the downside, though. I was 10 years younger than I am now. So my confidence and my hubris, let's be honest, was at an all-time high. So I drove up that bad boy and I didn't care. I will never drive up Mount Washington again. That is way too scary looking back at it now because you're like this close to the edge and then you can look out your window as you're driving and see a mile down. It is crazy. But here comes the fun fact that blew my mind. So Mount Washington holds the record for fastest wind speed ever recorded by a human being, and it was listed at 231 miles per hour, or for the rest of the world, 372 kilometers per hour. Okay, so to give you an example of why that's so astonishing, 110 years out of the year at a minimum, you can experience hurricane force winds on top of Mount Washington. We're talking about in the middle of summer when it's like super hot out and everybody's at the pool or at the beach. still hurricane winds on top of Mount Washington. And for me, that just blew my mind because I'm used to Europe, right? Ireland has lots of mountains, but we don't have hurricanes that often. The Netherlands has no mountains. Well, actually, it has one hill that's like 65 meters above sea level. That's about it. But also, no hurricanes. There's a couple of storms. We have some history of storms, for those of you who know about the storms. But I believe the fastest wind speed I've ever experienced was 100 kilometers an hour. And that was crazy for the Netherlands, right? But having 370 kilometers an hour winds 110 days out of the year, I was like, wow, that is Mother Nature telling all of us humans, like, I'm in charge, right? You're visitors on my earth. I'm in charge. And I'm like, Mother Nature, I am never driving up that mountain again. If I ever want to go back to the peak, I'm taking the train up because they have this wonderful train that goes up and it's beautiful. So I highly recommend if you ever have the chance, go to the White Mountains, go see Mount Washington. It's a great experience. But bring a coat. No matter what time of year, bring a coat. It gets cold and it gets windy, and it's just one of those amazing experiences that I recommend for everyone.
Wow. So yeah, I knew about the fierce weather in the winter in Mount Washington, and we're talking about YouTube. I recommend people to check out some of the YouTube videos from Mount Washington in the winter, but I didn't realize it was that bad in the summer too. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah, it's crazy. I
cool.
believe
Yeah.
one of my neighbors went up there last summer and had to turn back halfway through because the wind got so bad that it was whiteout conditions in July. Can you believe that? Whiteout
Wow.
conditions in July. It sounds like we're going to the Himalayas, right? Where we're like,
Right.
we have a very short window to get there. And if you're not at the peak at a certain time, too bad, you got to turn back. So, you know, having that so close here, Mount Washington in the northeast of the US, which is not really known for super high peaks, I just always found that fascinating because Mother Nature, she don't care about us and we need to
Right.
respect her. So
Cool. Cool.
that'll
Yeah.
motivate somebody to come visit. And if you do,
Yeah.
live free or die.
Right. All right. Appreciate that. So, well, thank you, Sean, for being on. Yeah, maybe we'll have you back as our education programs evolve, and then maybe as we wrap up the Six Peaks Challenge too towards the end of the year. So, cool. All right. Well, thank you both, and sorry about my instability with my internet. Maybe it is a storm here, but so all right. Thank you both.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.